Now at 5:30, and we continuing following a developing story. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has pleaded guilty to charges of lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russians. Flynn admitting that he discussed U.S. sanctions against Russia with that country's ambassador during the transition. But the big headline, Flynn is now prepared to testify against members of the president's team as a special counsel looks into possible collusion between them and the Russians to sway the 2016 election. Fired FBI Director James Comey has said that the president tried to get him to lay off Michael Flynn. Now, could Flynn be the guy who links the president to Russia's interference with the election? Joining us now, moderator of Face the Nation, John Dickerson. Always good to see you. Busy news day, of course. And what kind of discussions do you think are taking place in the White House tonight?
Well, that's a really good question. We don't know the whole scope of what the White House knows that the special counsel is involved in. But I think one of the things we know, what we do know from this plea agreement is that Michael Flynn had conversations with transition officials about this plan to work with the Russians to manage the response to the Obama administration sanctions. The reason that's important is because there have been lots of denials in the Trump team about whether they knew what Michael Flynn was up to, whether they were involved in any of this. Well, it turns out people were involved. And when in the plea agreement, it says transition officials were involved. Mike Pence, the vice president, was the lead of the transition. So that's one question. Did he know about any of this? But the biggest question probably being asked in the White House is, what don't we know? Michael Flynn has agreed to work with the special counsel. That means there's a lot of talking he may be doing that they don't know about inside the White House. You know, according to the New York Times, John, the president has been pressing lawmakers to wrap up their Russia investigations, calling senators all summer long. The president, as we know, has called these inquiries hoaxes. He calls them fake news, an excuse for the Democrats for losing the 2016 election. How hard is it for him now to make that claim with Michael Flynn pleading guilty and cooperating with prosecutors? Well, it's always been difficult for him to make that claim because you have two big political facts here. One, you have the fact that Republicans are running the investigative committees in the House and the Senate. So they are not working, with the Democrats. I mean, they're not carrying out some Democratic scheme here. They think there's enough at issue to look into. Then the other thing is that Special Counsel Mueller has the support of all Republican leaders. They talk about his integrity and they talk about his history of doing the right thing. So the president, and no one has picked up on the president's charges about this being all fake and made up. Now we have another chapter which shows that in fact there is something here. Lying to the FBI is no small deal. But then also there clearly is something else going on. We don't know what it is. But Robert Mueller wouldn't have made a plea deal with Flynn if there wasn't more to be if there wasn't more to find. You know, we have also read that the president feels as though these investigations weaken him on the world stage and I guess domestically as well. And I think back to President Clinton, who had to manage impeachment proceedings after a long investigation and trying to govern the country all at the same time. Is President Trump showing that he can handle both of these challenges, dealing with the special counsel and the congressional investigations and dealing with governing the country, doing the business of the people all at once? Well, it depends how you want to measure that. One big victory the president may have coming his way is that he may get his tax cut plan through the Congress, and that has helped him manage a lot of this, which is essentially the Republican Party is still foursquare behind the president. And that shouldn't be lost here. While he is having these occasional bouts of bad news, it looks like the tax cut bill is going to make it through the Senate, which means it has a likelihood of making it through the Congress. That would be a big achievement for the president. And he is able to carry on. There's a lot of other, obviously, criticisms people have about the president. But if he's able to pass tax cuts, that's a big achievement. And particularly with all the rest of this going on, there's obviously debates about what's in the bill. But just in terms of being able to get his agenda forward, he's got a lot of good news this week from the tax cut package. What is the sense in Washington as you talk to people in that town about the president? Is there a sense that he's in trouble? Do people feel that he might be somehow exposed in some way with these investigations? Well, there has been no proof of any collusion, period, of the scale that people have. There have been meetings with Trump administration, or excuse me, Trump campaign officials and Russians who said they had dirt on Hillary Clinton. But a meeting doesn't mean collusion. And the president's name, while it gets bandied about because it was his campaign, there's nobody that links directly to the president. What's important about today's developments is Michael Flynn was no small aide. He was a very important aide to the president when he was campaigning and central to his early foreign policy moves as a president. So this is somebody very in the tight inner circle of the presidency, and that's why this matters. But still, nothing we know today links to the president. And so there is, of course, concern about what might be out there that's unknown. But so far, while it's getting closer to the president, there is still no connection. And so, if they're able to pass a tax cut while all of this is going on, Republicans will feel pretty good after feeling pretty downtrodden after being unable to replace the Affordable Care Act.
Grateful to have you always, especially on a busy news day like today. John Dickerson, thank you so much. And remember to tune in or set your DVR. Face the Nation airs Sunday morning at 10:30 right here on CBS 4.